Person. So happy to be with you here again this evening. And this is day 7 of the 14-day challenge. And I am still talking about this book, Carol Dweck's book, Mindset. And the chapter that I'm talking about today is a continuation of what I talked about yesterday, which was about business leaders. And you might say, well, I'm not ready, and that's fine. But if you are running a nonprofit or family or anything that involves humans, then you need to know these things. So yesterday I talked about some leaders like Enron people and Lee Iacocca, who almost destroyed Chrysler, and so on. And talked about the reasons that they thought that they were so brilliant and so much better than everybody else, that they didn't really pay attention to actual reality and got into a lot of trouble. And this all stems from the fixed mindset that we've talked about before, from Carol Dweck's book. And it's about, if you have a fixed mindset, then you believe that your intelligence and your talent are what is going to carry you through life, and that is what defines you, and it can't be changed. So people who are very smart often think that effort is for losers. If you have to work hard at something, you must not be very talented at it, and therefore why would you bother? This is the whole fixed mindset idea. Whereas if you have a growth mindset, then the idea is that you can grow, you can change anything that you would like to do. You can if you have good teachers and you work hard at it, you can get better and achieve whatever potential you might have in that particular field. So that is seems kind of obvious, but you'd be amazed. And I have to say that I myself have in the past been guilty of this fixed mindset, this idea of, well, why would I work hard at something when I don't need to? And you know what? It's better to become as good as you possibly can. So earlier in the week, I was talking about some sports champions and the ones that had a fixed mindset and the ones that had a growth mindset. Today, like I said, I'm talking about business leaders. But again, as an example, even if you're just running yourself or running a family, these are things that you can learn about. So I'm just going to take a look at my notes here. I made a Google Doc in which I made notes for myself from this book, and I'm finding them very helpful in just thinking about things. And if you would like access to this Google Doc, just drop me a message and I'll be happy to send it to you. So I'm going to start with, I'm going to talk about 3 leaders, Jack Welch, Luke Gerstner, and Anne Mulcahy. But I'm going to start, she starts the section with a quote from Andrew Carnegie, who was a very successful businessman. And he said, "I wish to have as my epitaph, here lies a man who was wise enough to bring into his service men who knew more than he." So there you go. That's a great epitaph for someone with a growth mindset. So really quickly, just going to talk about these 3 people and I'll talk about what we can learn from them. So all 3 of them, they went into companies which had a very entrenched culture of elitism, of smugness, of we are the best, and also where the leadership was disconnected from the actual people who worked there. Yesterday I talked about somebody like Lee Iacocca who wanted to be royalty. So somebody like Jack Welch, he started off actually pretty arrogant. In fact, he didn't get a promotion that he wanted when he was young because the supervisor said that he was too arrogant. Criticism, well, but he grew. He grew. And one of the important things that he did was he learned how to listen and he learned how to admit when he was wrong. If you have a fixed mindset, it's practically impossible to admit that you're wrong, because then what do you have? If your image is that you are perfect and you are always know everything and you never make any mistakes, then if you do make a mistake, and everybody makes mistakes, then you really have a problem, because if you can't admit it, you can't learn from it and you can't grow. And one thing that Jack Welch did learn was how to admit his mistakes and grow from them. And the other thing that he did is that he would go to all these factories where they made refrigerators or whatever, and he would go and talk to the people on the front line, the people who are actually building these refrigerators, and ask their input. because the people who are actually doing the work, they usually know what's going on, but a leader has to be willing to listen, right? So, and then somebody like Lou Gerstner, there's the same sort of thing with IBM. IBM really was very, and to this day, people tell IBM jokes, so they still haven't lived it down. But again, he got rid of the elitism. Apparently, it was a thing that departments would bid against each other with the same customer. Like, how crazy is that within the same company? But if your bonus depends on what your department is doing, then you might be inclined to just put your head down and stick with that. And so he made them stop doing that. He made the bonuses dependent on how the company as a whole was doing instead of pinning them against each other. And finally, Anne Mulcahy, she took over Xerox, which apparently Xerox, as Dr. Dweck says, imagine IBM only deeply in debt and being investigated for fraud. So it was really not in good shape. And she really plunged into it. She talked to people. She listened to people. She learned how the business really worked. And she had to do things like cutting the payroll by 30%. That's painful. Like yesterday, I was talking about Al Dunlop, who was called Chainsaw Al because he would take companies and do that sort of thing to them and then sell them. But she didn't. She apologized to people when she had to do this. And she was compassionate. She did the best she can to grow it all together. So basically, all three of these people, they believed in growth. They believed that leadership is about growth and passion for the company, not about brilliance. Brilliance is really important. That's where innovations come from and so on. But a leader, brilliance is not actually a good trait in a leader. It can be, but it can also cause them to become so fixated on their own brilliance that they can't make room for anybody else. That's the other thing. If you have a fixed mindset, your world is very small. Like there isn't room for people to work together. And as I said, whether you're running a business or a nonprofit or even a family, there has to be room for everyone. It needs to be we, not me. And it becomes, so these leaders really showed that the importance of that. The other thing is that the other guys, the Iacocca people and so on, or Enron, they did not, there's no mention in any of their books or autobiographies or whatever about mentoring, about personnel development, helping other people grow. There's no mention of that at all. Like Lee Iacocca wrote a super self-aggrandizing autobiography. He doesn't mention apparently mentoring anybody or helping anybody else become better aside from himself. Whereas somebody like Jack Welch or Lou Gerstner or Anne Mulcahy, it was very important to them to help other people become better. And so it's really important, if you are going to be a leader of any kind, that you realize the importance of helping your people to rise. Because who was it that said a rising tide lifts all the boats? It's really important that you include all the boats in the rising tide, because that's what leaders do. So anyway, that's all I've got for you today. That's all I have time for. Trust me, there's more, but I'm going to carry on with it. And that's all I have time for you today. And as I mentioned, I made this Google Doc. Is really helpful for me in figuring out all these things, all these mindset things, because you know what? We are all leaders and we want to be good leaders. So if you want this access to this Google Doc so that you can also have it be helpful for you as you grow in your leadership, just drop me a message and I'll be totally happy to send it to you. So have a great day. Remember, I love you. Talk to you again soon. Drop me a message if you would like to have this access to this Google Doc, and I'll talk to you again tomorrow. Bye.